next up, big dog favorite, Antonio the God Gibson. All right. We absolutely love this player. I love this player. Noah loves him. Nick loves him. And I'll tell you just very briefly, like, why. So when you're kind of getting into like that second round, like mid to like late second, everybody's got question marks, right? Everybody's a question mark. So it's about like what you value most. And for me, it's about finding dynamic playmakers. And there is nobody more dynamic in this class than Antonio Gibson. Let's just give you a little bit about what he did. All right. He had 38 receptions, 735 yards, 19 yards per reception, 33 totes, 369 yards, 11.2 yards per carry, for a total of 1,100 yards from scrimmage on 71 touches. Just grasp your head around that. Someone that touches the ball that little should not have that much production. And on top of that, he was a kick returner. He returned 23 kicks, averaging 28 yards per kick. Like, this
It
is
just
to say
never
this,
ends. It just does not end with him.
to say this guy was unstoppable would be an understatement. Like, I really loved Tony Pollard last year, but Antonio Gibson is Tony Pollard on crack.
On crack!
Okay, like, what are your thoughts, Noah? Like, I freaking love this kid.
He's on crack. He's on steroids. He's on everything that you need to get up to 6 foot, 230 pounds, run a 4.39. That shouldn't be possible. Like, we thought DK Metcalf doing what he did last year was incredible. Imagine DK Metcalf at running back, and imagine him being able to turn. And that is Antonio Gibson. The guy is an absolute freak.
Freak man, yeah, that's me!
What he does on the field is like unprecedented. I know Tony Pollard was used in the same role, and he was still dominant, but he wasn't as big. He wasn't as physical. He wasn't as fast even as an Antonio Gibson. And just looking at his in-depth stats like Mike was talking about, right? 11.2 yards per carry, 8 yards after contact. So almost 80% of the yards he gained on the ground were after he was already hit. He had a 27.3 broken tackle percentage, but I was looking at PFF and they chart forced missed tackles. I'm not sure what the difference is. I think it's kind of subjective anyways. But on 38 receptions, he forced 17 missed tackles. On 33 rushes, he forced 16 missed tackles. So 33 total missed tackles on 70 touches? Like every other play, he's just putting a guy in the dirt and saying sayonara. He is disgusting. And I was telling Mike before we recorded this, he has like 2 pieces of game film on tape, but just like Kim K, you only need 1 piece of tape to know somebody's good at something. And Antonio Gibson is a fucking god, because one game against SMU, he had 3 touchdowns, a receiving touchdown, a rushing touchdown, a kick return touchdown. He's got it all. He's like an absolute buffet out there. And just, I know, whatever, diving into the film grinding stuff, going away from the numbers. He is so good at just being fast. He doesn't change speed. He just has one speed through cuts. He runs through people's faces. He runs to the outside. He maintains his speed. He just doesn't have any gears. He has the 6th gear, and that's it, and he does not blow a transmission along the way. He just absolutely
Run through a motherfucker face.
like Marshawn Lynch would say. And at the next level, if he is not used as primarily a running back or a hybrid player at the very least, I'm going to be extremely disappointed in whoever drafted him.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's excited about Laviska Shenault and how he's going to blow up the combine and everything. And, like, to me, this guy, not as good of a receiver, obviously, but just, like, that same type of dynamic playmaker, like, he should be lining up everywhere, right? Like, think back to, like, the Percy Harvin days where he's, like, taking snaps out of the backfield, taking snaps out of the slot. This guy is going to be a mismatch for, like, basically, 80% of the guys on defense. He's way too big for defensive backs, arguably too fast as well, but he's definitely way too fast for linebackers. If you put him in, like, an offense where you just, like, point an arrow and say, like, go, this guy's going to be, like, taking stuff to the house. Like, I haven't studied enough film to, like, know how refined he is as a runner, like, how he reads his blocks, how he reads his gaps.
Let me cut you off.
So I'm going to let Noah do that.
It's incredible. Like, you would think a hybrid player just kind of runs in a straight line or tries to run through people. And it's only it's like Cincinnati and SMU were the only games I saw, but he actually, like, follows his blocks. He's very patient, and then he just runs through people. And there was one run against SMU where he follows his blocks. 2 guys are trying to tackle him. He breaks free. He cuts another guy. He follows his blocks, and he takes it 70 yards to the house. Like, he's an actual running back. And sure, in the NFL, maybe he's not going to be drafted to be a 25-touch workhorse. But as Mike was saying, right, like a Percy Harvin, somebody who gets, 8 to 10 touches a game maybe, and they're very efficient on those touches like we saw at the college level, is going to be extremely valuable for you in fantasy.
Yeah, and we talked about draft stock a lot, and I think he's easily one of the biggest winners coming out of the combine. Like, when you're 220 plus pounds, you should not run a sub 4.4. That is not what physical humans and mortals can do. Obviously, he's a god, so he's not immortal, so we understand why he can do it. But, like, I think that like NFL is obsessed with speed, right? At wide receiver, at at running back, whatever. And this guy ran faster than most of the wide receivers and cornerbacks. So that's gonna really, pop some eyes open. And I think I just in my mind, I'm picturing guys like the offensive gurus, like Andy Reid, the Sean Paytons, like the Kyle Shanahans. If they get their hands on an asset like this, even if he goes in the 4th round, I'm pulling the trigger in the second of my rookie drafts because of like what I think he can do in the big leagues. Like, do you agree with that?
100%. My favorite landing spot for him, and it might not be the most fantasy relevant as a rookie, but it's the Cardinals. A team that wants to use 5 wide a lot and put their running back out to run routes. Like, sure, he's not the best overall receiver, but if he's going to be in the backfield for half the snaps and out wide for the other half, for fantasy, why couldn't he be an RB1 or whatever fucking wide receiver 1 for fantasy purposes, right? If you're going to be getting that many touches on a Cliff Kingsbury-led offense with Kyler Murray back there taking away a linebacker because he has the ability to run, I think that offense really has it all for him, and if they have the ability to wait on choosing him, load up their offensive line, and when Drake's transition tag runs out, they have Antonio Gibson waiting in the clip for them. Like, I don't see a much better landing spot than that. But also San Francisco, like you said, just basically another Deebo Samuel on that team and keeping defenses on their toes is going to be very, very hard to stop.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great call, actually, on the Cardinals. I didn't think about that, but that'd be perfect because I think
what they wanted David Johnson to be this past year.
Yeah, and I think the stat I saw was Kenyon Drake faced the lowest stack box percentage in the league, right? And that's not because Kenyon Drake is like the most talented or the Cardinals have the most talented wide receivers. They had Christian Kirk and Larry Legend, who's respect to Larry Legend, but he's definitely not what he used to be. So I think that really comes down to scheme. So if you can get someone that schemes one-on-one matchups with Gibson coming out of the backfield, swinging out, it's going to be a very, very lethal combination. So I actually love that landing spot as well.
Yeah, all he has to do is run one wheel route, and it's a 70-yard house call. Like against SMU, the touchdown he scored, he was just one-on-one with a cornerback as he was lined up out wide, so it wasn't even a mismatch, and he still just completely burned him. Like, he just has it all, and sure, he's maybe more of a niche player, and like not many people have heard of him, and he might not have the draft capital, but I just think talent is going to win out wherever he goes. Maybe it's not year 1, but year 2, year 3, I think he could, turn into a very good fantasy asset, mid-second, late second-round pick, even if he's a 4th-round pick in real life. I think it's well worth the investment because most of those guys anyways, to be honest, are probably going to bust. And I'd rather just, bet on talent at that point.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, if you think about it, like the outliers, right? Everyone talks about outliers and trying to identify them. Like, this would be like that type of outlier, right? If I'm going to bet on an outlier, I'm not going to bet on the wide receiver that didn't do jack shit for 3 years. And then now that he's got, a bigger body and more muscles, he's bullying 18-year-old freshman, right? That's not the guy that I'm going to go for. I'm going to go for this guy where like he didn't really get that much opportunity, but in the limited opportunities he did get, like very few people showed better than he did. So I think that's really what it comes down to for me. He's super dynamic and he's going to get on the field, right? Like, we don't get that much unless you play in like a punt and kick return league. You don't get any points for it. But what it does do is it shows the coaches like what you can do on the field. And if you like break one off and you return a kick to the house, like that's just more opportunity for you at the next practice, at the next game. Like Antonio Brown started off as a punt and kick returner, right? And then they saw how dynamic he was. He was actually like, he played that role for like quite a bit before he eventually solidified himself in that wide receiver. So it's all about opportunity. I think he's going to get opportunity to go on the field.
Yeah, he's just, I don't know. I can't say enough good words about him. If you have the draft guide, just try to read it up. Look at the game film that they do have. Look at the highlights, and you'll fall in love.
Yeah. So we don't want to hype him up too much because I don't want you going back and being like, yeah, Big Dogs told us to draft him over Jonathan Taylor. That's not what we're saying. But in terms of like, if you're looking to target someone in that second round, especially if it's not Big Dog followers, because I'm sure after this video, like everyone's going to take him in like the fucking second. But in your like home leagues and other leagues that you play in, I think you're going to be able to get him in that mid to late second range. And it's going to be
100%.
It's going to be sweet because if he gets that spot, man, look out. This guy's an electric playmaker in the middle. That's all we got for you. Hope you found it helpful. On to the next one, and see you next time.